Today's speaker is Mariel Miller of the Franchise Advisor. And Mariel is a 30-year franchise professional, multi-brand franchisor and franchise investment advisor, as well as a trusted resource with SCORE. She's been working with SCORE for many years now. And I think with that, Mariel, I'm going to stop sharing and take it away.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, super. So let me go ahead and share this slide presentation and give you sort of an introduction. Thanks all of you for being here. And I will say I'm in a very busy conference center today. So if there's a little interruption, I'm going to ignore it. So, you know, it won't last too long. And feel free, my contact information is in the chat room. We're going to cover a lot of information. And if you want to send me a text, I'll immediately send you my contact information and some resources, because if there's anything that I can do for the curious of you about franchising is provide you direction or insights or intel, but always resources, you know, because I think the educated, like that guy back in New York, the educated consumer or whatever, right, is a good customer. And so let me just give you just a moment about what it is that I do. What is a franchise advisor and why are we so busy? Because you're an expert at something else. I think that's a good tagline. That's the reason that I'm very, very busy, and so is my team. And the reason is we do the front end work for folks that are looking to invest in franchise ownership. They don't know where to begin. They're not sure how to investigate. They don't know what they don't know. And so when we sit and talk and help you figure out, should you even take a look at this route, right? Is this a route that might provide for you the outcomes for you and your family that you're looking for? Should you waste your time? And if there is a good reason to invest your time, how do you do it efficiently? And how do you do it so that your experience is a very high level experience? Your bar is set high so that regardless of the outcome, you know what good looks like. And now you understand how kind of it all works. We do the same for businesses, small businesses. And they say, well, gosh, what would it look like if I wanted to duplicate my business? Well, should you? You know, could you? You know, what does it really take? Who's doing it? All that stuff. So that's the work that we do on our end. Happy to talk to anyone. This is all I know since the 80s. So my only conversation, I'm a one-trick pony. Why should people, you know, reach out or try to sort of, you know, learn the reality of this whole landscape? Well, there's certainly, if it isn't SCORE as the best kept secret, which I do think it is, it's franchising as a career replacement strategy or as a way to build wealth and diversify your portfolio. It should be in strategy. It should be a part of a strategy to investigate if you're looking to switch jobs, if you're looking for alternative things to do. The big term today is side hustle. What if there was a way to do that and build an actual asset with a significant potential for equity and to sell someday? And that's a real business, and that's where we work in real businesses. So I love to start. Most recently, it's taken me my whole career, but I want to start with a quiz. People like games, right? So we're going to start with a quiz. And what I'd like you to do, I'm sharing my screen, but it's not. Here we go. Okay. So my theme this year is the game board. So here's the quiz. This is a 7-question quiz, and the answers are true or false. So since we have, if you don't have a pen, we have 5 fingers on either hand. Keep track of the true versus the false. All right. The purpose of this is to establish a need for a deep dive with maybe some help in this area of franchising. Here we go. We all ready? Yes? Okay. So true or false? Number 1, when thinking about narrowing down all of the different categories that franchise happens in, chances are you'll be more successful if you plan to leverage your work experience or your education. That's number 1. Number 2, one way to lessen the risk of failure is to focus on the recognized name brands, the established or the larger franchises, over any of the newer ones. True or false? Number 3. When thinking about your budget or your investment level, it's safe to assume that there is a basic correlation between my investment level and my potential return. The more expensive the franchise, chances are the earning potential would be greater than those lower ones. Okay, number 4. One way to decrease your risk is to consider what your town or community is obviously in need of, and or a business that doesn't really have much local competition. Number 5. Thanks to the internet and all the state regulations out there, the majority of the information that you're going to need to collect to make a good decision of any of the franchises out there is going to be found online. You just need to know where to go to find it. Number 6. Another way to increase your chance of success is to consider products and services that you have a strong interest in, you're passionate about, or you're a consumer of already. And number 7, it's hard to argue the logic of buying a cash flowing resale in a case when your main objective is an ROI. Are we good? So if we were live at this point, what we would do is go through these questions and get a sense of the preconceived messages and notions, or the understanding of franchising and how to be a good investor here, and go through the whole thing. And it's a really kind of interesting beginning. But what I'll do for the sake of time, unless there's anything in the chat, which Suzanne is going to read to us, take a look at your true versus false. A particular interest for me would be if anyone said that they were all true. So if you said that they were all true, you can tell us in chat. Is anyone doing that?
Someone's actually telling us they think all 7 are false.
That would be the other question. Who said that, actually?
Christopher Hull.
Okay, so they're all false. Christopher, you do the rest of this webinar, because no one's ever said that to me before. So there you go. I got to change my questions.
He's laughing. He's laughing.
There's one smart cookie right there. That's never happened. So they're all false. And if I were to read them again, it's really hard to get that they're all false. And the reason that they're all false is that you're an expert at something else, except Christopher might be an expert in this, is that none of what the average person thinks will increase or decrease their chance of success. Not your background, not what your town needs, none of these things, even passion for a service, has no correlation to your ability to be successful in that franchise and that franchise itself to be successful. So we would wipe all those clean and we would start with a new slate and educate you on how to get rid of what you think, because it is logic and you're successful because you're a critical thinker. But in the world of franchise investing or searching, whatever you want to call it, it's quite a counterintuitive journey and it's fun. So let's talk about what I was asked to talk about, today, more specifically, and that would be about styles and types of businesses, because the next grand misunderstanding here is from the 70s, by the way. I don't know how it's like the only place where people think like the 70s a lot, is that franchising is convenience stores and food. Now, food is 40% of franchising. That's why it feels like it's all food. But 40% being food leaves 60% across 39 other categories, you see. 60% is not food, but it feels like it's all food, right? So we need to get clarity on that. And it's so cool. That's cool. But what's more cool than that is the kinds of ways in which you can build wealth, protect wealth, and or replace your career, any career. There's never been a salary level I haven't shown people 2, 3, 6 ways where through franchise investing, they could replace that salary. There's never been a number yet. I'm afraid to talk to Christopher. I'm not sure what he would say. Okay, so let's really quickly tell you what you're not going to learn today, okay? And then what you might be we'll touch on. Okay, so the big picture is this, and I'm happy to come back if I'm invited and talk, in depth about any of this stuff down the road. not as exciting as what we'll talk about. So first of all, we now have passive franchise investing for real estate investors, and anybody interested in almost plug and play, which is so exciting. So now the interest and the candidate base is much more sophisticated than it's ever been. Of course, there's always still 90% of what we do is what we call active ownership, which means you participate in your business. Now, in active ownership, if you don't know it, there's two ways to do that, part-time and full-time. You can actually do part-time investment and build something real. But we're going to focus on full-time. And how do we see full-time? There's a bunch of ways you can do it. So the first way is what most people think, and that's owner-operator and or the technician, right? So you call Roto-Rooter and the guy who drives that truck comes in and works in your bathroom. It's a bit of the 70s. It's how it all started, but it's still 50% of all that we do, okay? Secondly, much more popular, rising in popularity is what we call the executive model. So when we meet somebody who has aspiration or is used to a significant six-figure income, they've worked their whole career, they've managed others and teams, and they just keep moving, right? And they have a larger vision. They want an extremely scalable opportunity. And there's a bunch of ways we're going to look at that. And then the last area, which we don't have time to talk too much about, like passive, is the grandest play at all, how you build an empire. There's another way I didn't have on there, but there's a master model, there's an air developer model, there's a multi-brand model. That's exciting. So we're going to now get into the good stuff really quickly. Semi-passive ownership. Here's how we get you out of corporate America. Any salary. The more money you're making, it might take longer unless your investment is higher, obviously, but any salary can be replaced, right? It's a matter of time. So you say, I'm making, $100,000. I don't want to be working ideally in 3 years from today. And that's what we're going to look at, strategies like that. Typically, the skill set that they're going to want is that you have a demonstrated an ability to manage a manager, right? So you have done remote control management. And now with COVID, everyone's really done that. Well, if your team didn't run away from you, there you have it, right? You can manage remote control. Most franchisors are asking for somewhere between 5 and 15 hours a week, but that's once you're launched. So I would say it's going to be on the high end. You're not going to have to quit your job, but it's just going to be pretty intense for 3 to 6 months usually. And then you'll go down to less than 5 hours a week. There are many that are run an hour a week or what have you. It just all depends on the business and the model. So this 5 to 15 hour a week is where I say this whole side gig thing, a side gig making significant money with a strategy to get you out of work is really a side gig to me that's worth looking at. They're also lifestyle businesses. You're retired, you're retiring, and you still have contribution in you. And most of us will. What am I going to do with that need to create, that need to contribute, and ideally maybe build legacy wealth for my kids or my family. So you can come into this thing and never work more than 5 to 15 hours a week. They've always been brick and mortar. So you look at supercuts for hair, budget hair, ice cream stores, you name it. What you generally find is somebody who owns 3, 6, 10, 12 of these, 50 of these things. They have a corner office, or maybe they've left and they kind of regionally run. So that's where it started. We are seeing changes there today, which we'll talk about. Extremely scalable. Once you come in and understand a system and how to run that business, you're really leveraging all that knowledge. You're leveraging the talent when you open that second one. You're leveraging your marketing spend when you open that third one. So I remember this great guy, a Wall Street gentleman who came to me, and I had no idea he lived like right down the road. I'm in Shrewsbury. And we ended up doing a 3-unit deal, and just took a look at, Monmouth County, and he popped them up really quick, like within the same year. Usually it's year by year or whatever deal you want to make. But the cool thing also is that you're much more fundable than you think, much more fundable, because the minute you own a business, you're very fundable. So if it's a profitable business, that business opens your second business, and the banks are dying to give you money to do your second and your third. So it's a really cool strategy that people should look at regardless if you think you're fundable or not. Very rarely can we not help people get money for these businesses. That's probably the largest misconception out there. And they also have terrific resale. So when you buy a franchise, it's like opening your own business. There's no difference on a P&L, except two things. You pay royalty, and generally your costs are going to be lower because economies of scale keep all of your, cost of goods lower and all that stuff. So it's almost an equal, really. The real value, besides all the help and all the recipe and business in a box and be in business for yourself, not by yourself. That's what they all tell you. It's all true, but it's kind of old. Beyond that, if you own one, it's fine. If you own 3, 5, 10, even private equity now will come to buy you. They used to only buy big businesses. You're very attractive. So that this semi-passive opportunity is really cool for a lot of different reasons. If we talk about active ownership now, what we find when you quit your job and start the franchise, or close a business and open a franchise, right? That kind of thing. When you put your talent into this thing, it will be cheaper, obviously. There's no manager. You break even faster, right? Because it's going to be you. You have the opportunity for terrific returns, as I said, if you're looking at the right ones. You'll be able to maximize your skill. So here's from my quiz, your passion. It's not that you don't need it. I remember getting a terrific candidate of mine into this gigantic deal because he was making way too much money. He actually worked for McDonald's Corporation. Did not buy a franchise, but that's a whole other thing. Anyway, so he was making a ton of money, probably the most money I've ever seen someone make. So it was a larger deal to get him out. And it was in automotive. I mean, I really don't know much about that. It's not exciting to me. It wasn't about talking about tires or cars or technicians. It was, what do I do? And what I do is deal with him and his goals and his life and his search, So your passion here is not service oriented. It is not the donut. In fact, look at McDonald's, right? I forgot how many they have anymore, but like 40,000 or something. It's like the worst burger in the world, or at least it's not great. It's not about that. It's about the systems. So if you like growing something, developing people, being the face of something, it's really, that's where the passion really, what do I do every day? That's part of your discovery, right? And active ownership offers us options far beyond buy a job. So the biggest misconception used to be, now I think the misconception is everything's too expensive. That's not true, but I don't want to buy myself a job. Under no circumstance do you have to. You could if you like, but there's much more beyond that. So, so active ownership, I have all these, hold on. Okay. The executive model, as we talked about just briefly, covers all the categories, right? So all these models, all these, what I call lifestyle models, right? Styles of business, right? The question we're answering is, what am I doing? What is my, time commitment? That's where we're at here, okay? Then we're going to get into the actual business model, right? So executive ownership, full-time active, it falls under active, but you're never the technician. So no sandwiches, no plumbing, right? No donuts, no car washing. You're not doing medical services, right? Therefore, you need zero of any of that experience. Zero. Medical people getting into childcare and kindergarten people getting into medical. It's the best way ever invented to reinvent yourself if you choose to. You could leverage your career, but again, there's no correlation. If you've been in corporate recruiting and you buy a staffing franchise, there is still no correlation. You're going to do better than everyone else in that system. There's no correlation because we don't need that from you. They want to know who you are, not what you've done, who you are, competencies inside. What are you made of? That stuff. So
Mario, are we going to talk about the actual types, the different categories of franchising?
Yeah.
The people probably on this call are either small business owners or people looking to be a small business owner
Yes.
and they want to know if franchising is an option for them. So we need to really get into the nuts and bolts of that part of it. We know that, maybe you don't need executive leadership or really know the industry, that you can buy into a franchise where you'll get a lot of help in the different areas. And you could be a full-time participant or a part-time participant. But the people on this call are probably, what is it going to take to get into it? Can I do it as a side hustle? Can I do it while I have a full-time job? Or if I don't have a job, how difficult is it to get into franchising? And we specifically, promoted this as franchising where it doesn't have to be brick and mortar.
Correct.
So I want you to talk specifically
That will
about
be the next slide.
franchises that are available that don't have to be a store, that people don't have to buy a store or lease a store or a property.
Yeah, so that's the next part of, that's the next slide.
Okay.
So the first piece is like my commitment, like you just asked, right? So in an investigation, there's different commitment levels of you, and we find these different models across all of the categories and across all of the business types, right? So from part-time, from passive, completely passive, to part-time, which we just talked about, the 5 to 15 hours a week forever, or transition that into a full-time, or you come in at the same level of corporate in this executive model. So all of those are available regardless whether or not we have a storefront or not. So hang on, I'm not advancing. Hang on one sec. It didn't advance here. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Okay. And then we said there's this owner operator, right? So that leads us into what we usually see in no storefront required, owner operator. So the owner operator means full-time commitment. It's the largest variety and the best option for people, which we'll talk about the reason why. Not a storefront. We're going to find they do have owner operator traditionally, but usually not. Usually we're seeing mobile, and inside of mobile, we have 40 categories. Home services right now is the best example of that, and also business to business. So what is it about these that makes them so attractive?
Can you be more specific about that? Go back to the last slide if you can.
Yeah.
And more specific about the non-brick and mortar. What types of franchises
Yep,
are
that's where we are on this slide, actually.
Okay.
So these are the characteristics of these businesses and why they're so attractive. They're across categories, as we said. They're easily scalable. They're very affordable. $60,000 to $70,000 investments to $200,000, of which an investor needs 20%. Because we're not signing leases, because we're not managing managers, because you're working it, your break even, your cash flow will happen quicker. You're going to have lower overhead. The reason for the success is the technology. So part of your search, when you're searching through, learning about these businesses, you move quickly away from what they do, like what problem do they serve? You get into why you'll be successful. And so tech enabled is really why most of these are so successful. You usually will have much lower labor. And by lower labor, we see you can work on your own, buy a franchise, it's you, or a team of 1 or 2 people. There are many, many businesses that build to $1 million in gross sales with 4 people, 3 people full-time in the office. Your flexibility, although people think it's higher, I can be honest with you, I've been working from a home office since the 80s. It could be flexible and it could not be flexible, but it certainly appears flexible if there's no office space, right? The marketing approach is unique and it's cost effective because you're not location driven. So people say businesses are successful, location, location, location. Well, if it's in my kitchen, how does that work? You know, it's all digital, it's all multi-channel digital anymore. And you're seeing much more of that, obviously, if you have a mobile business or you're home-based, right? So it's less important, your home address, you don't need to be on a cross street with traffic, right? So these are the hot reasons why non-brick and mortar are so popular.
But what are the non-brick and mortar?
And here
We're
are
gonna-
the key, what I just mentioned a little bit of is the key characteristic. So there's
No,
your
We're
investment.
not, but Mario, we want to know what they are. What are the businesses that are non-brick and mortar that are viable through a franchise?
Okay,
Like
here's
what?
how you could buy one.
No.
Okay, so
What are
we
the,
find,
what
we
industries,
find-
what names?
yeah, we find non-brick and mortar, mobile usually, in every business category. So we can go through the 40 categories. For example, we can start with automotive. In automotive, you're going to find businesses like tires that come to you, as an example. Tinting that can come to your home, right? Auto repair that comes to the house. Car detailing that comes to the home. We go into child-related services, you can see things like tutoring that comes to the home, right? So you work from your house, you have vans, you have teachers, they're in cars, cars are racked. You have a whole community of cars with tutors driving through. If we get into medical, we have businesses that are laser therapy for non-opioid pain relief coming to the home with practitioners, with a doctor on an iPad talking to your patient. Non-brick and mortar in medical services. And these are all businesses that can build to $1 million in revenue. Let's see, senior services offers a ton of home-based businesses. There's senior placement, where you're like a staffing agency for elderly who need care in their home. There's mobility repair. So if my mom has a scooter or has a wheelchair or a lift, stair lift, it's not working, I drop everything, pay whatever you ask, because I need my mom to be mobile, right? So that's a gigantic category, and that's a growing category. The pet business is also one of the more explosive categories that our investors absolutely love and should be on your list, frankly, whether or not you like animals. And if you're allergic, it's different. But we have pet businesses we're seeing, pet mobile grooming, absolutely magnificent. Businesses that are so successful, when you open your market, within the first month, customers can't even get an appointment for 3 to 4 weeks out. That's how busy. So when you buy a market, that might hold, they'll tell you 3 trucks. And so you'll be learning, what can a truck do? How do I open it? How do I put a truck out there? How many people, right? So as you're kind of scaling and you get all this help to understand the whens and the whys, now it's time to get the second lease truck. Now it's time to get the third. So you can max out that market. And if you're smart and you like it early on, you might have reserved 2 or 3, right? So you have tons of things in pet. We have a pet walking business that $750,000 gross sales, over $200,000 to the pocket of the owner is the average. They're walking dogs. Well, why would I buy a franchise to walk a dog? I could walk a dog. Yes, you can, but you cannot build that to $1 million. Probably not. So I'm going through some more of the hot categories. There isn't a category that doesn't have, generally speaking, brick and mortar, sometimes mobile. B2B is a very good service as well. But as I said earlier, the largest category to find the largest number of options for mobile, for non-brick and mortar, is going to be home services. So the way that I help people understand what do you mean by that is, if you pretend you're driving up to your home and you're looking at your lawn, there's services, mosquito control, gardening, landscaping, sidewalk, make it fancy, your driveway has to be redone. Your garage, you need more space for the growing kids, needs to make that a more space place. Then you open the door, you need a new door. Then you go through the house. This can take a half hour, but you get where I'm going. Now you're at your backyard fence. In that little example, there are 60 franchises screened so that they're good, that can build to replace your salary, regardless of your salary. And the cool thing is, we're in a range of under $200,000 all in. What does that mean? They average about 100 grand. What does that mean? Well, the SBA has a program called the 7A Express Loan. The 7A Express Loan needs a 680 credit score, and you need 10% if you're a veteran, and 20% as usual to be qualified for that loan. So that loan package would get you into any of these with 20% liquid. So what does that mean? If you don't have that understanding of some of the terminology of liquid, it doesn't mean you can write a check right now for $20,000. It means that you have access to $20,000. Equity in your home is access to $20,000. This is the reason why I said earlier, it's very rare we can't help someone get funded. But I think even beyond that, more important than that, the value prop is to be connected to these resources that can do your fundability. They could help you understand cost of capital. What does it cost to borrow this money? And one or two conversations with these folks that have put every single franchise out in America, they'll give you all the examples. There's so many combination ways people do it. It's not that difficult. But the SBA 7.0 is a popular, reasonable, way that people get in, because they need 20% injection. The second, and probably in a recession coming up, which is the biggest time in franchising, simply because how else will you replace your income if you don't have a job? There's no other way, especially if you're over 40, 50, peak earning is behind us. How do we maintain that lifestyle? So there is a program, a legal program that you can take a 401k so long as you're not investing in it. Still has to be old, right? Qualified. And every penny of that 401k will start a new 401k in a new business without any penalties and any taxes. It's the single most successful, most popular way, if you learn about it, that people choose, because you're basically taking your chips off the table on Wall Street and investing in yourself. And if you have confidence you'll do well, it's a good brand. No one else has ever failed. Why would you fail? That's what I always ask people at the end. Some people say they'll try, some people don't. That's why it would make sense if you believe that you could do it because you're a fit, for that concept. And so lastly, as we touched on, if you're looking at a business, under 150,000, and it could replace a six-figure income, and it could make money in the first year, one of the most important things to do to make up your mind if you finish your investigation and get an offer would be, when does it break even? Do I have the additional cash reserves, right? So when I started my business, I figured out I needed 6 months, of regular money, because my business wasn't going to make any money for 6. Well, guess what? I didn't make any money for 8. That was tough, right? Tough, because I misjudged it. So I'm very sensitive to that for people. Could I afford to do this without affecting my lifestyle, to get where I want to go? So those are some of the ways people do that. And the last thing I wanted to share with you as we kind of come up here to the time is, what does it mean to investigate? And if we don't talk, and I'm happy to chat with anyone who wants to speak about it, give you the real insight step by step, but what you could anticipate if you click around the internet and meet these franchises, there's about 5,000 out there, and it's a normal distribution. You got 13% that are outstanding, a ton of mediocrity, and some you shouldn't touch. Okay. What should happen when you ask for information is about a 4 to 8 week process that you'll engage in to learn.
So Mariel, what would be the first steps for someone that thinks that, okay, I think I want to investigate further, the possibility of doing a franchise as a side business or start out very small?
That's a great question.
I'm being told that we thought we had your website, and we thought the franchiseadvisor.com was the website. Is that the website?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's the franchise, not just
the franchise advisor.
The franchiseadvisor.com to learn more information. But what are like the five things somebody should either get together or information they should have to really start the investigation? There's people like you that advise and recommend and work with an individual that wants to look into buying a franchise?
Yeah, that's great. So I'll be happy to tell you that. So that's why these two slides are here. So if you're on your own, I just need you to understand what's ahead of you. No reason to bail early unless you find a red flag. It's like looking for a job. I always suggest to my people, wouldn't you want two options, two job offers, and say no to one? So people just, they pick at it, and then they have all these, they don't go far enough. So this is what will happen on your own. You go on the internet, you look for what you want to learn about, you'll find something. They will call you. You'll do an application with them. They're going to pre-qualify you. Okay, do they like you? Could you afford them? That's usually a call or two. Then you get legal documents. They're called FDD. This is a prospectus. Okay, it's like buying a stock. You need to understand that, right? So we can talk. I'll be happy to help you. But that's a very thick document. That's their perspective. Like a mortgage papers, it doesn't tell you how to be successful. It just tells you what you're signing, non-negotiable. Okay. All right. So put that aside. I'm like, don't even crack it open. It's not a good read, you know, for now. It's the mutual investigation. You're in about 3 to 4 weeks of one-to-one phone calls with the franchisor, walking through the elements of the business. Okay. That's what happens. 2, 3, 4 weeks like that, depending on just how sophisticated they want to make their process. When that's over, that's the midpoint. Are you guys in sync? Do you like what you hear? Do they like you? Do they think you'll be successful? Do you resemble their high performers? And that's frankly why I'm here at a conference twice a year, because we have 300 brands. We want to know who's doing the best in your system, because we go out there and we match them, we find those people. So once you're done with the first half of diligence, now you are legally required, they legally require it to the franchisors to give you access to all the franchisees, not only current, 2 years who left. And then you validate with them. And I have all this stuff to give you in terms of questions to ask and how to get a hold of these folks, so that everything that they told you is now validated as real. That process ends. I always recommend and help create a pro forma. Like I said, 3 to 5 years, when do I make money type of a math problem. You got to do that. And if it all is wonderful, usually 80% of the time, you will fly out to their corporate office, and they usually pick up the tab, and you'll meet them face to face. And then you go home, and then you have the decision making, you know, lawyers look at your stuff, and all of that happens at the end. They approve you, they call you, they send you documents. This is about like a month, 2 months, you know, week by week. When you work with an advisor, and we are called consultants, people call us brokers. We're not brokers. We don't sell businesses, right? Our work is completely complementary, like a realtor. So we like in the middle. When you work with someone like myself, there's about an additional 2 weeks, 3 weeks in the beginning. So on the left side of here, you're going to see, I call it a 90-day discovery, because in the very beginning, we're going to figure you out a little bit deeper. We're going to do financial qualifications so that you know before you go shopping what's going to be comfortable. You get really comfortable with your options, you know. You'll learn what's ahead of you in the process. We preview a bunch of them, and then you choose which ones are most exciting. So all that is in the beginning, and that all starts with like a 15-minute phone call. Pretty simple. Most folks in my line of work will do it sort of the same way. And they should, just so that you know what good looks like as well. If you choose an advisor, ask them about their background, ask them how long they've been in the business and why. They should work with you, you know, like a realtor. I mean, every single week there's something to talk about, texting all the time, you know, because it is a lot of information to gather. And my recommendation is you're comparing, right? You're comparing not only 1 or 2 or 3 of the best options that fit, right, that are available where you live, but also if you're comparing spending money, what else are you looking at? If you're comparing career replacement, you should probably have a headhunter too. So it's just so efficient to be looking at all your options in the same maybe 90 days or 60-day period. So I hope that answers them.
So the beginning process is they can go to a McDonald's, or they can go to a ServPro directly, or they can come to an advisor at no cost, like yourself, and kind of say, okay, this is what I'm thinking. Can you tell me the different categories that I might be realistic for me to consider? and kind of go down the initial stages at no cost. Okay. And then at some point you hand them off to a particular franchise company.
Well, I usually end up being really good friends, actually, but sometimes, I mean, here's how it really goes. We have one conversation and decide if this is a good time for you. If it's a good time to get started, we spend an hour to 2 hours. That call, what we're trying to figure out is, should you even do this search? Because if what you need doesn't exist, we're not going to work together, right? Like a realtor wouldn't take you on either if what you wanted in your budget doesn't exist in her inventory. So it's important that you know, could franchising work for you? It doesn't work for everyone. And if it could, is there something that could do what you need? And I mean, need it to do. Like I'm making 140,000 right now. I want to replace that in a week. I can't help. But you know, how we have to find out like where you're going to compromise, right? So then most people are very reasonable. So once we figure out what is the set of criteria, I am willing to look at a business if it looks like this. And since I know, we should know, what is the set of criteria I want in your candidate, right? Because they tell us that, and then you tell us that. If, usually it is, it's worth a shot. You know, we take about a week, week and a half, and go through all of the best stuff through the categories you're interested in and make a short list. We just do the front end for you because you're an expert at something else. So then now, even if nothing else happens, at least you have a short list out of 5,000, you should probably look at 6, you know, and you're going to preview them. There's a preview process that they will do because they know us, right? No commitments, they'll preview. And so long as it's like, okay, I get it now. Like, I don't want a dog walking business. It's silly. Go talk to them for a half hour. You'll come back and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Or you'll say, I told you I didn't want that, right? So now, do we or don't we commit to the investigation, to their, you know, 4 to 6 week process? Yeah, probably. Let's do it. And then you're going to work with me and with them, you know, the whole time, right? And along the way, you're going to drop some off. It's like dating at that point, right? And hopefully at the end of it, you have 1 or 2 of the very best fit offers that are currently available.
And Marielle, part of that initial process is, isn't it true when you buy a franchise that there may be a franchise available in your local community, or they may only be available in the next state, or certain territories or regions are available or not available?
Oh, yeah.
So then part of that criteria, initial criteria is, okay, is there anything really available in northern New Jersey or southeast New Jersey or in Essex County versus Monmouth County?
Exactly. Right. So
that gets weeded out also in the process.
Your short list is going to be this long, depending on you. And by the time I call you back, you know, it'll be this long. Right. So that we're not going to even meet them if the market's sold or they don't want to come to New Jersey yet. So that's kind of weeded out, you know? Yeah, absolutely. And you know, your criteria is going to be negotiable too, some of it won't be.
So then another person has a question here. I'm going to go through some of the questions.
Okay.
They're looking to ask about resources for getting funding from the state, the banks, or privately. How is that done? How is that worked out? What's available? You talked a little bit about SBA.
Yep.
They have a program where they'll help you get money. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
So real quick. So when I go do your search, I send you to talk to the money people. So now when we circle back, we're on the total same page. You will always be, generally speaking, fundable higher than you want to spend, right? And there's no reason to spend more money ever because there's zero correlation between the investment level and the return. Zero correlation. It's crazy. I mean, there's a guy I knew once and met him a couple of years back and came to a seminar, and he bought a business in senior care 14 years ago for $60,000. His business was doing 14 million annually. Now you can't do that because that category is done. But we can talk about what categories aren't done, right? Are hot now. So there's no correlation. The money piece is easy. So what happens is you're going to understand the most popular strategies today. They're going to tell you how much wood you qualify, if you qualify for SBA 7A or that particular buy a business thing, loan program. There are no grants, female, minority, there's no grant money for this. You need 20%, let's just call it 20 of any number. That's going to determine your budget, really, usually. Yeah, so that's really it. And there's just tons of people ready to help you with all of the different options along the way. And then you just hold on to that relationship. You do your search a couple of months. And if it's getting near to an end, then you might want to engage back with them and check for timing to get funding. There are some franchisors who fund as well.
So
No collateral loans.
the nuts and bolts is you need 20% of whatever the franchise is going to cost. The rest of it you borrow really
Yep.
from the company that you're buying the franchise from. And then there's funding through the SBA, but the banks, the state, there's no grants, there's none of
grants.
that. It's
Small business loans, home equity loans. Like I said, a very small percentage of franchise companies have funding. So that's another route, but it's rare to find that. You have a lot of traditional sources, they'll go through all of the different options, and usually they do combinations of as well. There's combinations of a little of this plus a little of that,
Okay, so we have another question. A gentleman, or I think it's a gentleman, is saying some franchises want you to quit your full-time job
Yes.
to buy their
Right.
franchise.
That's right.
But this particular person is saying, what if you want to buy a franchise as a side hustle? Are there still opportunities out there for that?
Of course. It's just that, just like some franchisors, Great Clips, for example, will not allow you 25 miles, like beyond. You have to be 25 miles in radius. Other franchisors, you could buy in another state. So it has to fit your criteria, basically. So you want something, keep a job, part-time, yes, that's criteria number one. First cut in the road is that question of mine if we were speaking. And then we just go through to get another 10, 15, 20 characteristics that are going to be important to you. There are more and more and more of those transitional businesses, but every franchise does not offer that.
Okay. So again, people were asking about what are the non-brick and mortar options. You really went through them. And they're, like you said, there's thousands of them that you can go through. So I think for anybody who is interested or really wants to investigate further, they should contact Marielle.
Yeah,
You obviously can do your own investigation with direct franchises, but it looks like Marielle is a wonderful source for information to start the process and really weed out, maybe some of your questions and whether or not it's a good idea for you personally, whether it's a part-time or full-time, or something that you want to jump in both feet at the same time. Marielle, anything else you want to say to wrap it up?
Thanks for the note. I have to check on the IT guy, first of all. That's not good. I do appreciate that. Yeah, and I do want to wrap something up. I'm not being elusive here. I'm not being elusive. It's just that there's no use dropping names of stuff if we don't know budget, availability. It's just like one or two calls. Let's figure out, you get a short list. Yes, this is available. It can do what you need, That's just kind of a little bit more, I think, helpful, than we're here with 300 franchisors. I probably love 299 of them. I mean, they're just great, So there's a lot going on. It is worth a shot. It's worth a shot to see what's out there. It's a lot of fun. Kid in a candy store.
And there's one more question about, is there a specific webinar or platform that can guide people who are planning to run their business for disabled kids? I would recommend that you contact a SCORE mentor and then go through that. But the score.org website has webinars, on demand videos, subject matters, subjects in different areas, or Jane and Nancy, who are SCORE mentors, certified mentors. Reach out to a mentor, find one by industry, find one that's in your area, local area, by zip code. You can do it on the website. Jane, you have a better answer for that than I do?
No, I think you got it. Sit down with the SCORE mentor.
Can I add one quick thing? I met a lovely man from New Jersey, Princeton area. And he is a wealth manager type of an individual with an autistic child, and he quit his job to start a mutual fund to fund businesses for disabled and needy children. And he's always wanting to know who we're meeting out there. So reach out to me, and I'd love to connect you to him. He's a lovely individual. He's a good guy to know.
Thank you, Marielle. And we're going to send the slides out for everybody who attended today. You'll have the slides with Marielle's contact information and the categories that she went down and looked at. So thank you all for joining us. Again, the next statewide webinar is February 8th. Going to get me on the call. I'm going to be talking about social media. February 15th, Jane and her chapter has another marketing. There's so many different facets of marketing. We could spend every single week of the year talking about different facets of marketing and how to help your business. So thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you on the next call. Have a great day.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.